Hi, everyone. Thank you to the Denver Business Journal and Scott for having me today. It's a tremendous honor. And I want to say that the Denver Business Journal does such a good job of bringing community to the Denver business community, which doesn't necessarily seek to spend time together, but you do a wonderful job. Thank you for that. Thank you to the sponsors as well. And congratulations to all of the finalists. I know there's a lot more to come in your careers, but you have done so much already. What you've achieved is amazing, and I'm just very proud of you, having read about your stories and met several of you last week at the Neiman Marcus party. Ooh la la, Neiman Marcus. I am Sue Allen. I am CEO and founder of Allonhill. Allonhill is almost 3 years old. We're based in Denver. We have just under 300 employees today. We had about 200 at the end of the year. Give you some idea of what my life is like. We have about 100 other employees around the country. We're hiring at the rate of about 20 people a week right now. Most of those are highly expert in mortgage servicing. We're also looking right now for leaders in IT, recruiting, training, HR, loan servicing, and due diligence. Sorry if that's a cheap shot, Scott, to use your podium to recruit, but there you go. If you know anybody, tell them to get on allonhill.com. Our clients include all of the major Wall Street firms and every major bank in the country. We also work for many of the largest servicers in the country. Those are the people who process your loans. And we work for Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and the United States government. None of these companies is actually based in Denver. All of our clients are in Washington or New York, interestingly. I really did start this business to do something that had not been done before, which would be to look at mortgage loans, to audit mortgage loans in the loan file before they go into a securitization, not after, and to verify to the rating agencies and to investors that when they buy a mortgage securitization, everything that's disclosed to them was exactly what we saw in the loan files. Fascinatingly, that is a groundbreaking change from how it was done before the meltdown. Allonhill is not my first go-around. I did have Murray Hill. I started it in 1997. I sold it in 2004. When I sold it, we were based in Denver. We had 150 people. 137 billion in assets under management, and we were named in 88% of the new issue securitizations for subprime loans that year. We introduced a concept to Wall Street. I'll tell you a couple of stories of what that was like because it actually wasn't that easy. Prior to that, I was a CPA, an auditor. I actually worked for 3 of the big accounting firms. And people ask me all the time, hey, what's it take to be an entrepreneur? How do I start a company? And I love that question because the answer is learn accounting. I think that accounting is, and the discipline that those firms taught me as an auditor, it is fundamental to my success in running a business. I highly recommend it. There's another question that I get all the time, which is, why would I start a business in mortgage securitizations in the fall of 2008? And just to remind you of what that was like, TARP was just announced. Does anybody know what TARP was supposed to do? Anybody know what TARP did? Right, so what TARP really achieved was to put a freeze, an absolute freeze, on a market that was already scared to death. It was so confusing. But I did choose then to start my company. I started it a week after Lehman closed its doors. And I did it because I had devoted my career to mortgage securitizations, and I felt that my industry had let me down and let us all down by just not getting it right and by not having an independent auditor's view of mortgage loans. And so, believe it or not, and as I look back on it, I still can't believe it, and probably neither can my husband, I am just not a stand-on-the-sidelines gal, and I decided I'm going to just start this company and see what happens. It turns out that concept, that message, was very warmly received by Wall Street. A couple of other questions that people ask me pretty frequently, which is, how do you do this? How do you create companies? And some of them, honestly, with the very best of intentions, say things like, well, it must be nice to be so lucky, to be in the right place at the right time, or you just have the Midas touch. I don't know how you do it. So I thought I would tell you today what it was really like for me. And as Scott mentioned, I will talk a little bit about my childhood. in describing that to you. So first of all, like many of the women in this room, I'm accustomed to being the only woman in the boardroom, and especially in the later years of my career, and especially working on Wall Street, walk in, it's all men. But to me, that's just how it's done. It's just what it's like. It's no surprise. And you just get used to it, because what matters to these guys, to my clients, is just if I make them money. If I make them money, they don't care about gender or anything else. The fact I'm from Denver and a little company in Denver. But let me tell you something about my management style that might help you understand how I broke in to Wall Street. Just a few weeks ago, at the start of the summer, we were hired by one of these big banks to do a big review for them. It would have been millions of dollars of revenue, and they just loved us. And we went out, we met with them, spent a lot of time, put together a great proposal, and they accepted it. We signed the contract, sent it back, and we noticed that the signed contract never came back from them, which my superior deductive reasoning tells me was not a good thing. So we contacted them, and it turns out when they took it to their board for approval, the chairman of the board said, "I'm sorry, they might be the best out there, but they are not a big name. We have to go with a big name." So they went with one of the international, in fact, consulting firms instead of us. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to write them a letter, and I want to tell these people what I really think. And so I did. And I wrote the letter, and it went along the lines of, "Dear Sir, I just want you to know what a pleasure it was to meet your people. You have an incredible organization. This venture, although an inconvenience for you, is going to be a tremendous success, and I know it. I want you to know how honored I am and my team was to have even been considered by you. And the fact that you would have hired us if you had been allowed to is an honor that we will treasure forever. If we can ever help you, please know we will be thrilled. Give us a call." So like 2 weeks later, they called, and now we're working for them. We didn't get the big assignment. We got the second best. Thank you. So I want to tell you a little bit also about starting my business in 1997. I had a little baby. She was born 6 months after I started that company, and she went to New York with me a couple dozen times at least, I would say, when she was little, and so this always happens to me. So one of my rules of thumb is this: if you stay in a nice hotel, they always have access to great babysitters. Keep it in mind. So I line up a babysitter, I'm flying in, I have to give a speech, flight's delayed. I call and I tell the hotel, "It is so important that you not let the babysitter go. Please tell her I'll pay her. She needs to stay, because in New York, once they're gone, you are never getting these people back." So I show up, I have the 18-month-old, they've let the babysitter go. So it's a really nice hotel. It's got like this concierge in like the black jacket and the black t-shirt, very metrosexual. So I go up and I'm like, "Okay, so you let the babysitter go. What do you suggest I do with the baby?" And he said, "Ma'am, I'm very good with children." And so I came back after my speech. A couple hours later, she owned the place. It was great. I'm not sure I recommend it, but it was great. And I'll tell you my favorite sales story on Wall Street, too. What went on to be the biggest issuer of subprime securitizations, one firm, Lehman, called, and I went to New York a dozen times, tried to sell them, convince them, hire us. "We know you haven't ever heard of us." Finally, in the middle of winter, right before their first ever subprime securitization, this guy called me, the head of trading, fixed income, and he goes, "So, okay, here's the thing, we kind of like you guys. We don't really know what you do, but it's not that expensive, and how much harm could you do? So you're hired." And by the way, it doesn't cost that much. It's not so expensive. $500,000 in revenues a year, just so you know. So, and then we went on to be hired on every securitization that they did from 2001 till when I sold in 2004. In the meantime, I went to see another very large firm. And when you go into these settings, these trading floors, I at least have found you never know what to expect. It might be one guy. It might be a room with 20 people and a projector set up, and that's what I had, was the PowerPoint show. So I walk in, it's a big formal presentation. I start talking. Well, the head of fixed income, the decision maker, isn't there. About 10 minutes into my talk, he comes in. So This guy is, he's for sure not 30 years old yet. I can promise you that. He's going to make 30 million that year, though, for sure. He's got this long hair. He's got a lot of zits, full set of braces. And so he's running this place, right? And so he sits at the end, he takes a seat at the end, and he's extremely impatient. He's just like, you know, the hair. And it's like, he sits there for about 2 minutes, and then he pushes back, stands up. On his way out the door, he says, "Can anybody tell me why we're spending our time with her?" And he leaves. So everybody else left really quickly. And so then I get hired by this other firm, by Lehman, and then a couple weeks after that, I get invited back to present once again to the first firm with the long-haired guy. And it's the same scene. It's the big room, dark, projector, filled with 20 people. I go in, I start talking, he's not there. 10 minutes in, he shows up, same scene. So impatient because I'm obviously keeping him from trades. Couple minutes into it, pushes back, he's like, "Can anyone tell me why she isn't on every one of our deals?" So we went on then to be on every one of his deals. So I think I hope persistence comes through and determination. It wasn't always easy. I mean, I hope that sounded kind of easy. Those were the high moments.